or guilds were amongst the earliest forms of organized business in India, an economic coming together of traders or skilled professionals, often family or community based. Until the East India Company brought to India the concept of a modern corporation, a chartered company issuing stock, paying dividends and multinational in presence. Devdutt Pattnaik, welcome to the first episode on this series. I'm going to start by quoting from a well-known management thinker whose seminal work was The Fifth Discipline. He talks about learning organizations and organizational development, and in reference to India and China, he said, "My intuition is they will move somewhat together, but in very distinctive ways. But I think the thing that will be really common to both of them will be the fact that they won't be able to do this without reconnecting to their heritage. They will have to develop a confidence that they can do this as Indians and they can do this as Chinese. They have learned a lot from the West, but they don't have to copy. They cannot create a Chinese or Indian version of a Western model. The Western model itself is basically bankrupt. It does not give enough attention to the human side of development." If the concept of corporations was borrowed from the West, is there an Indian way of doing business?
Yes, there is. To understand this, we have to understand the Indian context. And to understand what is the Indian context, we have to hear a story. And the story is of a long time ago when Alexander came to India. And he was the first European, one can say, came to India. And he came to the banks of the Indus. And he met there a very strange man called a gymnosophist. He called it a gymnosophist because this man was naked and he seemed to be wise and everybody respected him. So Alexander asked the gymnosophist, because he was doing nothing, he was sitting over there staring at the stars. He says, "What are you doing?" And the gymnosophist said, "I'm experiencing nothingness." And then the gymnosophist asked Alexander, "What are you doing?" Alexander said, "I'm conquering the world." And they both laughed. Each one thought the other was a fool. Alexander felt that it's a waste of a life to do nothing. And the gymnosophist thought it's a waste of a life to do anything. Wherefrom came these differences? If you understand these differences, we'll understand the difference between the Indian mindset and the Western mindset.
Okay.
You see, Alexander was told all his life that when you die, there is a river that you have to cross. It was called the Styx. And when you go to the other side, you'll be asked a question, have you done anything extraordinary in your life? And if you've done something extraordinary or spectacular, you will go to the place that the French call Champs-Élysées or Elysium, which is reserved for heroes. Otherwise, you have to go to the asphodel fields, which is meant for commoners. And so Alexander was told always to do something spectacular. And he was told stories of heroes like Hercules and Theseus and the epics like Iliad and Odyssey. This is what he was told. But this is not the story that the gymnosophist heard. You see, the gymnosophist heard a different story. He was also told of a river which separates the land of the living from the land of the dead. But you see, don't you make the journey once. You make the journey to and fro endlessly.
That's what the gymnosophist was told.
Which means you're living again and again and again and again. It's not one time. You have many chances. So now this changes perspective. Imagine one person who's told you live only once. His life is full of sense of urgency. He wants to do everything in this one life because that's the only life he has got. The denominator of Alexander's life was one. Now look at the gymnosophist. He can live many, many times. Not only does he live many, many times, he can live the same life again and again because it's cyclical. What goes around comes around. So the denominator of the gymnosophist's life is infinity. So the value of his life, no matter what he did, was zero. The value of Alexander's life was the sum total of his achievements. So the focus of Greek narratives has been achievement. The gymnosophist, the focus is, so if nothing is of value, then what's the point of his life? Introspect. Figure it out. Figure it out. So you do many things. You have to do many things in life, but the point is not the doing. The point is figuring out why are you doing what you are doing. So the two paradigms are different. Therefore, the Indian way of doing business was not about doing business, but using the act of doing business to figure out Why are you doing what you're doing? Question it. And in that there is growth, intellectual growth and emotional growth.
I understand this is our conditioning, and that's why, and in the context of this, you're explaining what the Indian way of doing business could potentially be.
Yes.
My only issue with this is that this is so much more achievement focused. It comes with a sense of urgency, both qualities that are imperative in the world of business.
Yes.
You've got to achieve, you've got to do it fast. Is the Indian way of doing things, living life, the infinity, best suited to the notion or the concept of profitable businesses as we know them today?
You see, when we use the word profitable business, who says it's a good thing? Humans say it is a good thing.
No, profits are a good thing because they allow you to think of ideas, make something constructive of them, earn off them, not just for yourself, but to be able to share the wealth, run an organization efficiently. So, profit is not a bad thing.
How much profit? Give me the perfect number. That's where the problem is, isn't it? It's not about profit. Everybody understands profit. But how much profit? How do we know it is not motivated by greed? And is greed okay? If you're saying greed is okay, then of course it's a moot point, then we don't discuss it. Then the question comes, no, greed is not okay, but what is need in greed? Now that's a conversation. Let's figure out the conversation. And that's where introspection comes in. Why do I want to grow is an important question. We can delude ourselves with politically correct answers that we're doing to generate wealth, but what's the actual reason? What's the real belief? Maybe it's self-aggrandizement. I don't want to be a head of a 100 crore store. I want to be a 100 crore company. I want to be a leader of a 10,000 crore company. Then I feel good about myself. So then the purpose of business is not to generate wealth for the community. It is to feel good about myself. And that's a problem.
If in India the belief is also wealth and not only wealth, the core question that most of us are faced with in our daily existence as our corporations, what is the purpose of a corporation? What is the motivation that should ideally drive a corporation? Should it not be profitability? Because profitability is also equal to a certain efficient way of running, a certain distribution of wealth, and profits can only come if you produce goods and products that consumers want in the best, most efficient fashion.
Absolutely.
So profitability, is it wealth? Is it generosity? Is it ambition? Is it greed? What should the purpose and motivation of a corporation be?
I think the motivation of a corporation is to create happiness. In India, currency is of three types, and it was represented using the three goddesses. So you have one goddess called Lakshmi, so you have this goddess who is sort of famous for sitting on a lotus. Everywhere in India you have this image. She sits on a lotus, she holds a pot which is overflowing with wealth, and you have another goddess. And this goddess is famous because she holds a lute in her hand, and she is Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge. And there's a third goddess. And if you go to Bombay's Mumbai Devi temple, or if you go to the Mahalakshmi temple, for example, you will see these three goddesses, and one holds a trident, and she's called Durga. So you have, forgive me, but now this has unfortunately become a very infamous term. It's LSD. One is material, tangible wealth. The other is intellectual wealth. And the third one is emotional wealth. And these are the three things that two human beings transact with each other.
Why does Durga represent emotional wealth?
You see, Durga is, the more popular name of Durga is also called Shakti, which is power. Now, if I walk into a party and look at you and say, Ma, you have gained a lot of weight since the last time I met.
Thank you.
You'll feel depressed. So you feel suddenly disempowered. But a sentence. Or I come in and say, you know what, you're looking wonderful and radiant, and the clothes you're wearing are lovely, and you look really nice. And suddenly you feel empowered. So what has happened is an emotional transaction is taking place, and we don't even realize it's actually a currency that can be used very, very well between two people. And we yearn and crave for this emotional currency. Everybody wants it. Even the gods want it. So you have a material need, you have an intellectual need, and you have an emotional need. And organizations have to work at all three levels. The question is somewhere along the line, the balance scorecard, if you look at it carefully, is about LSD.
Okay, one of the conflicts continuously in the creation and sustenance of corporations really is the ability to balance short term with long term, right?
Yes.
Now, professionally speaking, there are lots of glib quotes that can
Yeah.
help you understand this situation, right? Jack Welch, who's one of the most famous management thinkers in the world, and therefore and also venerated for the success that he brought to General Electric, said anybody can manage short, anybody can manage long. Balancing those two things is what management is all about.
Okay.
What does our mythology say about whether you need to be short-term, whether you need to be long-term? And if you're going to choose the middle path and tell me, Menka, you need to be bits of both, please tell me how we achieve that.
You see, when you look at mythology, there is Vishnu, the god who sustains the world, is associated with two animals. One is called a serpent, a sarpa, or shesh, and another is a eagle, Garuda. There's something called Garuda Drishti, which is long sight, and there is Sarpa Drishti, which is immediate goals. The question is, what should I focus on first?
Right.
When you look at how the story of creation happens in India, the moment they talk about creation, they also talk about its destruction. They talk immediately about destruction, which means you don't just talk about the building of the organization. At the day it is begun, you discuss how it's going to die. It's not assumed to be immortal, because mortality is a universal truth, and you are aware of it. So you're discussing mortality, and then you say that, okay, if I'm going to be born and I'm going to die, how do I live a healthy and happy life? And how long can I sustain it? If that applies to health, same thing applies to organizations. Unfortunately, the way we are structured, we break it down into bits. You see, we break it down into bits. And when a CEO takes over, for example, he's told your lifespan is 2 years or 3 years, and you have to win every year. You're not allowed to lose. So effectively, he's under pressure on the Sarpa Drishti. The shareholder says, I want winning every year, growth. Every year you have to grow, year on year, grow, be profitable. And that's where and I'm told that that's the measurement, and I'm told that's the reward. And if I'm going to last for 3 years, so I'll just make sure that I win 3 years. I'm not thinking about 30 years and 300 years. So perforce the system is saying Sarpa Drishti.
How do you correct that? Because you're always going to have someone in charge for a limited period of time.
Yes.
They're going to try and excel within that limited period of time, and therefore for them short-termism will always be the first goal to achieve, as opposed to long-termism. I understand that the ideal should be long-termism, but not all of us can actually put that bill in that sense.
See, in the health case, you see, you can't escape the consequences.
You can't, and it's personal.
Yes. In an organization, you say, I can escape the consequences.
Because I want to be around. I will
Also,
not be CEO, maybe.
You see, look at this is slightly more technical and beyond my space, but if I'm a shareholder of the company, what I need from the company is wealth. I don't care if the company, if it does something horrible, I won't be held responsible for it, right? That's what's limited. When it's called a limited company, the shareholder is not responsible for the horrible things the company does.
Right.
So
but he will have to bear the downside risk.
He just
So
loses
he's not
money.
yes, but he's not complete. Yeah, well, that's an important thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but if the faraway country is polluted by it,
He doesn't
and
have to bear the
so
ill effects.
I mean this company will shut down. I lose some money, but I still maintain my lifestyle. So I'm not responsible for my consequences. So I just focus on that one side. I'm saying I'm not responsible for consequences. So give me my money back. I behave like a money lender, and I say give me my money back. I don't behave like a shareholder. I behave like a money lender. So I've given you 10 rupees, you give me 20 rupees next month. And if you don't give it, I'll throw you out of the CEO position. So I own my vision is short term. I'm not responsible for the long term sustenance. So in a way, I have built into the system freedom from consequences.
Interestingly, you've made the case for family-owned businesses, right? For almost 10 years now in this country, we've looked at the phrase family-owned business with some amount of contempt. It's again a Western concept that we have all inherited over the past 20, 30, 40 years, that ideally an organization must have separation between ownership and management. It should be professionally run, and it should be run for the benefit of all stakeholders, as opposed to the benefit of the entrepreneur that may have started that organization. But there the problem is that if you're going to have leaders that come in for limited periods of time, they're going to be concerned with their immediate term.
Yes.
So short-termism.
Yes.
But if you have organizations owned by families that will patronize these organizations, help them sustain, help them grow over generations,
Yes.
that is long-termism.
Yes.
You're making the case then for family-owned businesses, a phrase that we've looked down upon in some ways for the last 10 to 15 years.
Look at the word professional. We are using it again without context. We're saying anywhere, anytime, if it's professional, it's good. Let's now decode professional. What does it mean, be professional? It means cut out emotions. Be logical.
Cut out the D.
So D does not matter.
Yes.
So out of the 3 goddesses, which for 3,000 years has been celebrated in India, we're taking 1 goddess is out.
Right.
Power. And please note, that is the one thing that we crave for as human beings. We want to feel powerful. And if I look at it physiologically, you're saying focus on the left brain. The right brain is bad. Right brain is not good. Focus on the left brain. And that's, we're saying that is good for the organization. The problem with the family-owned business is that it focuses too much on the right brain. So my son is better. My son may not be better. You see, India is called Bharat, and we forget a story of the name, this character called Bharat. There are many Bharats, of course, in mythology, but one very obscure story which is amazing, and I found it very interesting, is about the son of Shakuntala, and he had many wives and many sons, but he rejected all the sons. And we don't know why. He said, he doesn't look like me. That's the literal translation. But perhaps, and then what he does is he adopts, or he's given by the gods, a son who's actually an illegitimate child, rejected by his parents, an orphan. And he elevates him to be the heir. If I decode the story, it's basically saying a king who rejected his own biological children in favor of a son who was good enough to rule. And we are named after that man, Bharata, Bharata.
It is equal to meritocracy. Next week on Business Sutra.
Evolution of leadership. It's not becoming one style, it's context. Early phases, Parshuram. Perfect phase, Ram. Then become Krishna, create talent, and then move out. Go away. The world will continue without you. It has been continuing for millions of years.
And if it doesn't deserve to continue, it will self-implode.
It will self-implode. So chhod do.
Detach.